So, following last week's experiments with the Brusho thickener, I thought I would just talk a little bit more about them, as I've found one or two more things out over the past week. If you didn't see that video, I'll put the link up to it here, because I think probably you'd want to watch that one first. Okay, so after I'd done the video, I was told that you should keep your Brusho thickener, the leftover thickener, in the fridge. So I put it in the fridge, and as you can see, we originally measured out 600 mils of water, and I think was it 20 grams of the Brusho thickener, and as you can see I've only used, it's still on 450, so I've not used very much at all really, so it's going to last a while, and it's lasted perfectly well in the fridge. But you can see it's actually a much better consistency than it was when we used it last week. It's now all, you know, there's no lumps there, it's all gone into the water. So I'm just going to measure out 3 little pots for 3 different colours, and you only need a tiny amount, so really it's quite economical because that's going to stay in the fridge for some time. Okay, so just a little bit in each one, and like I say, much nicer consistency than it was. So perhaps if you've got the time, make it up a couple of days before you need it. Okay, so I'll just pop that out of the way. Right, so I've got 3 colours there, and I'm going to use different colours this week. If I can get the pin out, some grey, some ultramarine, and some orange. It's a lovely orange, this colour. And I'll just pop them to one side and show you what I did. So these were from last week. And of course they're completely dry now, so we might have a go and draw on top of those and see what happens. And then I did this one, and I did this one slightly differently, so I'm going to show you that now. Actually painting with it, I did, as you can see, I did sprinkle some colour on the top afterwards, but it's really smooth. Where these little dots are, normally it will be easy to pick the pigment up again, but actually this is very, very smooth, so it'll be interesting to see if that does lift. But first of all, I'll show you how I actually achieved that. So I had a nice big brush, I think it was quite a flat one. I actually painted with the thickener. Now, as you can see, it's quite gloopy. Whether you could actually add water to it at this stage, I don't know how that would affect it. We could try that. Obviously it would thin it out, but whether you get the same effect when it dried, I'm not sure. So, and I just kept really working it. So although it's quite thick, it will just blend into the paper a bit if you use a big brush and get it all nicely blended in. So the idea with this one, I sort of set off with a sunset in my mind, with quite dark skies, which is why we've got the blue here. So again, give it a really nice mix up. And where the 2 colours meet, you can see how they're blending quite nicely into each other, providing you give it plenty of welly. Perhaps you'd like to try adding an extra bit of water and see what the finished effect is. If it does, if you might not find it's just a smoother finish when you've diluted it, I don't know. And then some of the grey, just to get some darks in there. Perhaps could have done with a bit more pigment, but like you can see, it just blends in quite nicely. Some in the side. And then I'll just pop that to one side to dry. I did sprinkle some Brusho into it actually, but we're going to leave that one as it is. Okay, so that was how I did this one to begin with, and you can see how it fades. That's where the orange was. And like I say, I sprinkled some in. So what I was going to do today was to see how then it takes to being painted on top of. And we'll paint on top of it just with some Brusho made up. So I'll just pop some of the orange in a palette with some water and just paint with it like that and see, does it lift these colours up or not? And it would appear not, wouldn't it? It would appear that they're all staying put underneath. I'm just playing, I'm not actually painting anything, just seeing what the effect is. I'll just go over this thicker part here, see if it brings that colour up. And I think it is actually, isn't it? If you look there, the orange is going, I'm hoping you can see that on the camera, the orange is going quite muddy there, so it has lifted that blue up. We'll try it again on a different area. Let's just move it so that it's in the, you can see here. And can you see that's not orange, it's lifting that blue out and making it into a greeny colour. Yeah, so even though we used the thickener hoping that it would make a little glaze that we could then paint on top of, it's not prevented it from lifting the pigment, so it's not really serving a purpose that way. It still leaves that nice smooth feeling, but you're not going to be able to draw on top of it like I thought we might have been able to. So I'll have another go on this one and see what we can do on here. And this time I'm going to try and paint on top of it with another layer of Brusho thickener, and I'm actually going to put a little bit extra colour in so it shows up a bit more, and see what effects we can get with that. It might not lift this the same because this was done slightly differently. This was, the Brusho had been mixed in to the thickener completely, so there was no spots like this one, and then it was printed on. So it might not lift just as much as the ones where we've got heavier amounts of pigment like on here. Obviously it's changing the colours slightly because got that orange on top of those and letting the other colours come through from behind. So it doesn't appear to be lifting. Let's just have a try on this. And of course there's not as much water in this. This is just the thickener, whereas with the first picture when I was going over the top of it I had a lot of water on my brush. So maybe if you wanted to layer it up to alter the colours and things, put a glaze on, the way to do it is have thickener underneath and then thickener on top, and not actually work with water at all. Okay, and so I'll just try again on this one, and we'll stick to the blue, and I'll just go over where there was some powder here from the Brusho and see if it lifts that. And actually it's not too bad, it's pretty much staying put. Let's go over here. Yeah, so again, like this one, I think perhaps it's better because we're using thickener on thickener, not water onto thickener. So just have another go with the water on this one. I'll use actually this time watercolour paints, not the Brusho. And I'll get some ultramarine and just paint around this shape that's sort of been created. I'm using it quite thickly this time, not too much water. And I will just maybe soften the edge of that a bit. So it's not It's not moving very nicely on the paper, isn't the watercolour? It's can you see it's all grainy and it's like inky. It's not because this is a good artist's watercolour. I mean, I'll put it on the paper over here and you can see how nice it is on the paper, but when I'm using it over the top of the thickener, it's not getting that same effect. It's going all, leaving lines and going all inky. And yeah, it's picking up the colour as well a bit there. So yeah, I'm a bit disappointed actually. I thought today I was going to show you that we could build up some layers and draw on top of this Brusho thickener, but that's not the case because it's going to lift up the colour still. So I think the thing is, you could perhaps try and use it like this, thickener on thickener. It's not the easiest thing to paint with if it's in those proportions that we're supposed to make it. You know, like I say, it's very gloopy. Just trying to show you what sort of consistency it is there really. It's not something that you're going to be able to paint fine. I've just lost a little bit of footage there. My camera, the SD card was full and so it stopped videoing, but you haven't missed much. All I was doing was showing you how, basically saying how difficult it was to get a very detailed drawing using the thickener, because obviously it's so thick you can't use it with a fine brush and get any fine lines. So I just did this little flower to indicate that, so that wasn't anything that you missed really. And the other thing was to say that I used a Dale Rowney blue pearlescent ink, just the first thing that I picked up really, and drew on top of the thickener there, and of course said that that was, you know, we could do that. So although we couldn't use anything with water on top of it, which was going to lift it up, using something like an ink or a charcoal just to draw with on top of it does actually work. So that's the little bit of footage that we lost, and we'll carry on from there. Okay. The main thing I wanted to tell you is how the consistency improved with keeping it in the fridge. So I would recommend that you make it up a few days before you need it. Mix it up as much as you can, keep it in the fridge, and you'll find that consistency a lot better. And also, my second thing was I wanted to know if I could paint on top of it, and I think the answer to that is no, because it's lifting those colours. But we can draw on top of it with the ink, and I think that actually, you know, you could make some really nice backgrounds and then draw some patterns on top, and you could end up with some really nice little abstracts that way. Okay, and you could of course draw on top of it with probably with pencil and charcoal and things as well. So I hope you found that useful, especially if you've already got the thickener. And again, if you find any ways you can use it that I haven't thought about, if you want to pop those in the comments below, I'd be interested to know. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.